Good evening, Agile acquisition enthusiasts, and welcome back to the Underground Digital Tiki Bar. It's Friday night, and that means it's time for another episode of Agile Acquisitions and Alcohol. So cheers. On tonight's episode, I want to talk about build versus buy. This is a decision that is supposed to go into every acquisition of software for the federal government. Should the government invest the dollars into building custom software solutions, or should they buy existing solutions either through commercial off-the-shelf software or COTS, or government off-the-shelf software, GOTS? It seems the logical answer would be to buy things that already exist if things exist to solve your problem. This is where the conversation gets complicated. The government doesn't have typical problems that most of the rest of the private sector of the U.S., for example, experience. So when they're trying to buy things, there's all sorts of problems the government has to consider that makes them unique. Maybe, or maybe not. This is the question that you have to answer. If you're trying to sell commercial products to the federal government, you need to understand what is the federal government's process for actually using the software. Because what's going on in the head of program managers all over the federal government is, even if I can find a commercial solution that meets 80% of my needs right out of the box, how much time am I going to have to spend getting that commercial solution through all of the authority to operate processes necessary or approvals necessary to even use that system or put data into it? This is where all the FedRAMP and FISMA compliant questions start coming into play. Now, there's a big discussion to be had here, not necessarily in this video, of why are we applying federal standards for security to commercial products. First off, most federal agencies use NIST Standards. But if you look at NIST Standards, they'll tell you these are not standards, but recommendations for security policies. Federal agencies should instead look for what is the intent of each of these standards and find out how commercial systems solve those or address those intents. But if you're a commercial entity and you want to sell software to the federal government, you need to understand what those are. There's some things you're just not going to have. A form signed by a person in this position just isn't going to exist if that form and that position don't exist in the environment where you typically sell your product. But there are lots of things that the government considers incredibly important for their software to have and to ensure security. I'm not suggesting that you package your commercial product with security standards that are spelled out by some sort of government standard, but instead, I'm suggesting before you attempt to sell to the federal government that you find out what that crosswalk is, and you will be prepared to explain how the standards that you use relate to the standards that the government expects. And so there you have it. That is my opinion on build versus buy. I think if we can use existing software and not have to spend the time to build custom things, then by all means do, but commercial sectors got to make it work for the federal government in a way that the federal government can use it efficiently and not spend 6 months through an ATO process. On the other hand, there are situations where it just makes sense to build things the way the government needs it, and if that's the case, use Agile development software and get that MVP out to your users quickly. And until next time, cheers.